Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we are talking about potential questions for Tesla's Q1 earnings call, Tesla's new board member, a couple other pieces of news, and then some macro stuff to close out the episode. Tesla stock on the day today did finish down 3.6% to $705.63. That compared to the Nasdaq down just 1/100%. Alright, so yesterday, say.com, which is the website that Tesla partners with to solicit questions from retail investors for their earnings call, opened up the question submission process for Q1. So, the most upvoted questions by number of shares upvoted will be asked to Tesla next week. Generally, Tesla takes 5 of these from retail investors, so I wanted to take a look today at the question I am asking and why, as well as the current top questions, as there are a couple there that I'd like to advocate for and against. The question I have asked is, Elon has mentioned a 50% compound annual growth rate target for Tesla in the past. Is this still in line with Tesla's ambitions for the next 5 to 10 years? This would be 4 million plus vehicles in 2025 and 20 million plus vehicles in 2030. Is 40% a more realistic target? So this is pretty similar to the question that I asked last quarter, and I'll talk a little bit more about why in a second, but this is more of a follow-up question to something that Elon said on the last earnings call. In response to a question from Dan Galves about whether or not Tesla could maintain a 30% growth rate over 5 years, Elon said that similar to what he had said a few years ago, that in his estimate, quote, Tesla would grow at an average compound annual growth rate, average rate in excess of 50%. I still hold that belief, end quote. So to some extent, this question has been answered, but the reason I'm asking it in the way that I'm asking it is to really emphasize the volume that is associated with that kind of growth, especially for that 10-year time horizon, which maybe I should have made the question even more specific towards that 2030 date. But I think having those volumes in the question itself adds helpful context to any answer here. Asking questions before we actually have the earnings call and the shareholder letter is difficult because we don't know what they're going to address in both of those things. I try to avoid questions that I think are likely to be addressed, or questions that Tesla could have obviously foreseen and opted not to address anyway in either of those instances. For example, I want to know Model Y production rate, but if Tesla doesn't give us the Model Y production rate, I think they're unlikely to answer a question on that. Similar thought process on Gigafactory Shanghai or timelines around full self-driving, or anything that could be answered with, we'll talk more about that at Battery Day. And obviously that rules out a lot of good questions. So my thought process here is take advantage to try to get something more longer term that obviously will not already have been addressed in the shareholder letter, and something that can be helpful primarily to investors that are analyzing Tesla and the analysts covering Tesla. Specifically, I want to emphasize that last part because I think Wall Street's forecast for Tesla for out years, meaning the later years in their forecasts, are incredibly low, and I want that to become as obvious as possible. Just to go through a couple here, Goldman Sachs, we know they just gave Tesla an $864 price target. Well, they only expect 14% of global auto sales in 2030 to be electric vehicles. So their forecast for the entire electric vehicle market for 2030 is less than Tesla's target if Tesla can grow at 50% compound annual growth. Another example, Morgan Stanley, they have been bullish and bearish on Tesla at different times, but they have a bull case on Tesla, a $1,200 price target. In that bull case, they have Tesla selling 4 million vehicles in 2030. This 50% CAGR puts Tesla above that in 2025 and way above that in 2030. Even more bullish analysts like Pierre Ferragu, Dan Galves, who we've done interviews with. Pierre's got 2.6 million in 2026. Dan Galves has 2.5 million in 2030. Now, we've talked with both of them. They've both discussed how there are upside to those numbers. But still, in each case here, we're maybe an order of magnitude off of what Tesla may be aspiring to. I think any chance there is to raise awareness around those real long-term targets is probably a good thing for investors to start understanding. It also gives Elon a chance to discuss maybe a roadmap for getting there, though I expect they'll save a lot of that for Battery Day. And there's another question here that we'll talk about in a second that may also help get a little bit more elaboration on those plans. But that's sort of my rationale behind asking this. If you agree with it and you want that question to be asked, you'll need to upvote it, so the link for that is in the show notes. Again, basically every share of Tesla that you have counts as an upvote. Cumulatively, the most upvoted by share count will be asked. You can see the total number of shares that have upvoted a question on say.com, so people in the past have misinterpreted that as my individual share count. That's not, that's just the total upvoted shares. I would of course love to have 20,000 shares, but I'm a bit short of that. Next, I want to really quickly go through my thoughts on the current top 5 questions, hoping that me sharing my thoughts on this will help us continue to work towards better questions getting asked in the future. So the first one here is from Jim. He's asking about coronavirus causing a boom in delivery services. Would Tesla shift some resources to prioritize a delivery service use case for a pre-robotaxi version of the Tesla network? I'm pretty surprised this is the most upvoted question currently. I don't think there's much opportunity for material insight from this question. We know that Elon has said in the past that they would consider launching before robotaxi to generate scale. Whether or not they include delivery in that service, to me at least, is pretty inconsequential. It's pretty obvious that delivery of different items would be on the long-term roadmap for autonomy anyway. And given the responses to previous questions on pre-robotaxi Tesla network opportunities, they've clearly been very generic, so something non-generic in response to this question would be extremely shocking. I would expect Elon to say something like, maybe we could consider something like that, but at the end of the day, there will be a very short period of time where drivers are even required, and then I would expect him to go on another tangent about regulations or something related to full self-driving. Next on the list right now is Lynn asking when they will announce the next Gigafactory and how many Gigafactories do they have planned for the next 5 years. Love this question. This is essentially what I asked last quarter and would have incorporated it into my question this quarter, so definitely one I would advocate upvoting. Next is Michael asking, will Tesla owners get priority when it comes to being early release beta testers for Starlink terminals? And will those owners with the most Tesla products get the highest priority? Asking for a friend. Probably don't need to tell anyone, but I obviously do not like this question. This is completely irrelevant to investing in Tesla, and absolutely not the proper forum for a question like this. Questions like this, in my opinion, degrade the intention of this whole process and make it less likely to be used in the future. Fourth place right now is from Kendall's asking about if Tesla would start acquiring utilities like the Hornsdale Power Reserve instead of selling them battery storage, and if it makes sense for Tesla to buy peaker plants and convert them. I'm alright with this question. I think the first half is really interesting. The second part of the question doesn't make a ton of sense to me because buying a peaker plant to convert it to be battery storage just seems like an unnecessary step. Why not just make a new plant of battery storage and put the peaker plants out of business? But it does get us thinking more about Tesla Energy. I think that's a good thing. And then right now in the fifth slot, Don is asking if Tesla can elaborate on their plans to enter residential or commercial heating, ventilating, and cooling, if they could offer some basics on how that sort of a system would work, and if they would consider entering the heat pump water heater market as well. Solid question here, but sort of answered by Elon on Twitter today. He said in response to a similar question, quote, I'm dying to do super efficient, quiet home heating, ventilating, and cooling with HEPA and water distillation. It's weird, but I really want to do it, end quote. So if this question does get asked, maybe we'd get a bit more information on that, but probably just a matter of priorities right now for Tesla. So those are my thoughts on the top 5 questions, and then scrolling through the rest of the questions, I saw one that I would like to advocate for. This one comes from Frank, who I actually recognize. He's done a lot of good work in the Tesla investor community. He's asking, quote, can you give us an update on the solar roof ramp? How many are you currently able to install per week? What is your installations per week target for the end of 2021? End quote. I love this one because installations encompasses production and installations rather than just asking about production. My question was about an area that I think is underappreciated, Tesla's long-term outlook. I think the solar roof underappreciated as well, so more information here would be welcome. So again, if you want to upvote any of those, the links to my question and to Frank's question will be in the show notes, and that'll take you to the overall question list as well. Next today, Tesla has appointed a new board member, Hiromichi Mizuno. Mizuno was most recently the chief investment officer and executive managing director of Japan's government pension investment fund, which has $1.6 trillion in assets under management. That represents 10% of the Japanese stock market and 1% of the total global stock market. So significant to say the least. Mizuno stepped down there at the end of March. That was a planned exit, so it doesn't appear to be any red flags there. It had actually been planned for October, but then extended to March. About this appointment and about his previous experience, Tesla says, quote, during his time there, Hiro emphasized the importance of environmental considerations in portfolio management and became a global thought leader in sustainable and responsible investment. He also challenged many established market practices, including short selling, to promote long-term value creation by corporations, end quote. From that description and from the other background reading that I've done so far online, it does seem like a really good fit for Tesla. Next today, we do have some more news on China's electric vehicle subsidy policies. Reuters today is reporting that although China had recently extended their subsidies for new energy vehicles, that they will cut those subsidies by 10% this year, 20% in 2021, and 30% in 2022, and that under this policy, subsidies will only apply to passenger cars costing less than 300,000 yuan. The Model 3 currently is priced at 324,000 yuan before subsidies. So to have that base model be eligible, which I'm not sure how that impacts the eligibility for the rest of the lineup or for options added on, Tesla would need to lower the price by 7.5%, which could be easily done by uncoupling autopilot from the base package, for example. And of course, over time, Tesla will lower their costs and probably lower their retail price anyway. So definitely something that we'll have to keep an eye on. But that subsidy is only equivalent to $3,500 US. And of course, we've seen Tesla survive through the US tax breaks going away. Next is a quick little funny story from Audi, and I wish I could credit the person that found this, but I'm not sure exactly who it was. But Audi, on their frequently asked questions page for electric vehicles, under the incentives question, copy and pasted Tesla's wording verbatim, including the point that says, quote, "Every new Model 3, Model S, and Model X is compatible with CCS charging," end quote. It says that on Audi's page. We give the advice to other automakers all the time to just copy Tesla's roadmap. Well, that's not exactly what we meant by that. Obviously, that has since been updated, but kind of funny nonetheless. Lastly today, just a couple of quick hits on the macro environment. We did have a new jobs report this morning. So initial jobless claims in the United States over the last week came in at 4.4 million versus Bloomberg's forecast of 4.2 million, but down from last week's 5.2 million. So still continuing to see really high growth in unemployment. We also got from IHS Markit new purchase managers index numbers. So this is for the April 7th through April 22nd timeline. The composite output index was at a 27.4, where 50 would represent neutral in terms of the economic growth. This is a new series low, so a new low since IHS Markit has started keeping this purchase managers index, and down from the 40.9 result in March. When we look at service business activity, that is indexed at a 27, down from a 39.8 in March. And then the manufacturing PMI came in at a 36.9, down from 48.5 in March, a 133-month low. IHS Markit's chief business economist said, quote, "The COVID-19 outbreak dealt a blow to the U.S. economy of a ferocity not previously seen in recent history during April. The deterioration in the flash PMI numbers indicates a rate of contraction exceeding that seen even at the height of the global financial crisis, with jobs also being slashed at a rate far exceeding anything previously recorded by the survey," end quote. So, nothing terribly surprising here. The market is obviously betting on a pretty strong V-shaped recovery. So we'll just have to see how much of that materializes. But that will do it for today. As always, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up for notifications. And also make sure you're following me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. And I'll see you tomorrow for the Friday, April 24th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.